Hey everyone, Connie here, and welcome to my review for Pokemon Sword and Shield. So I'm going to say right off the bat, before anything else, there will be spoilers in this video. There will be spoilers to big events throughout the game, and I'm going to try not to go into too much very specific detail, but there are going to be very notable big spoilers. Because in order for me to fully give my thoughts on this game, I feel like I need to talk about everything I can. So, this is your spoiler warning right away, right off the bat. If you have not played this game up until the end of the Pokemon League, um, then do not continue. That being said, this won't contain post-game stuff. I'll just be talking about the main game. Okay, so for those of you who are still here, um, I grew up with Pokemon. I started my journey into this wild fandom back with Pokemon Red version. Yeah, the very first generation. And I played every single main series generation up until Gen 7. By the time Sun and Moon were coming out, I didn't have a Nintendo 3DS at that point anymore. I had one, but I sold it to my sister because at the time I needed the money, so I sold it to my sister prior to Sun and Moon being released. I ended up watching Sun and Moon through other people's Let's Plays on YouTube, which I would have done anyways, but still. That was my only real connection to that generation. And when Sword and Shield was announced, I thought that it was going to be the same. But then, with talking to my sister, we came up with a deal where I would be able to get a Nintendo Switch Lite, which I now have right here, along with Pokemon Shield for Christmas. It would be a joint gift from her, my father, and my brother. And Christmas came, and yeah, I obviously got it. So since Christmas Day, which was just about a week ago, not quite, not exactly, but yeah. Since Christmas Day, I had been playing, and I just today finished the main story. So we're going to be talking about all of my general impressions on this game, and I don't know how long this video is going to be, because it's basically just going to be that. I'll try and edit it down if I can, but if I can't, it might just be really long. I'll try to keep it as short and sweet as I can. So first we're going to talk about my first impressions based on pre-release. When the game was first announced, when we got our reveal trailer, I was really hyped. It looked really good. The Galar region looked really exciting and new. Our 3 starters looked really interesting. And I just really wanted to get into it. I was really excited, just as I had been for previous generations. And then we started seeing more directs and more videos, more new Pokemon such as Wooloo being revealed, and Corviknight and yada yada, Dreadnought, so many others. And I just kept getting more excited because it's like, this is looking good. And then we started hearing other information, like it's going back to gyms, which honestly we kind of expected. We didn't expect the Island Challenge to be for any other region. We heard that there's going to be different focuses and different ways of handling things, and that it's going to be different. It's going to take a lot of the old concepts but do them in a new way, basically. So through seeing all these trailers and Nintendo Directs and all of that, I was really excited. But there were a couple things I was wary about. And I'll get to those more later as I talk about each separate section of the game. And we're going to start off, though, with story. So the story of the game was something that I was actually not too worried about because the stories have been progressively getting better. At the very beginning with Generation 1, the stories were not a focus at all. It was very much put on the back burner, with the focus of the game being the gameplay and the just general concept of try to catch Pokemon and beat the gyms and eventually Elite Four. But as the series progressed, a lot of the games started getting more complex stories. Um, to the point where last generation, Sun and Moon, had a massively complex story that some people thought was a little too much so, to the point where there were people who thought that certain parts of the plot for Sun and Moon were a little much. I personally loved it. I thought it was fantastically handled, but to each their own. Now, as I said, that was something that I wasn't really worried about. But the story, the actual plot, far exceeded my expectations. It handled a lot of things, like I said, it felt very classic, but handled in a new, fresh way. It brought us back to the concept of a Pokemon gym league in the very much the same way that most of the generations of Pokemon have been. But the way it handles it, and again, I'll get to this more later on, but the way it handles it is new. It's a much bigger thing in this generation. Um, and then when you actually start getting to the meat of the story, you know, where the characters go, where the evil team goes, as well as the how the legendary Pokemon and the region itself fit into everything, it starts to get really exciting. And the final moments, like during the Pokemon League championships and everything, when you find out like who the true villain is, when you find out all of where all this lore you've been hearing about has been leading, and the darkest day is brought upon Galar, it's insane. It's nuts. It's just completely mind blowing. And it's just handled in such a more subtle way than Sun and Moon, but also still makes it feel big and grandiose, especially with the visuals and music, which again I'll get to later. Um, but then we get into our characters. So outside of the main character and the seemingly single mother, the characters really branch out from there because obviously our main character doesn't have much of a personality at all. We have our three rivals. Yeah, we have three rivals, and that was one of my biggest fears going into this because I was worried that it might be too much and that one of them might be left in the dust, that they might not get the attention they deserve, yada yada. But I was wrong. All three of them felt like they were properly inserted into the story and they mattered. First off, we have Hop, who is kind of our main rival. Hop is the the younger brother of the current champion, and he's a lot like other rivals we've had in recent generations. He's very high energy, and it's like a can-do attitude and stuff. But Hop also displays impatience, a little bit of rudeness, and even a slight temper at times. He shows even at one point in the game a bout of depression that really helps his character. All of this really helps his character feel more real. It gives him the depth needed to help him stand out from previous rivals. We also have Marnie. Marnie is another challenger along with you and Hop in the gym league. And she comes across as a little distant at first, but you start to realize how she's just very clearly not used to this, not used to interacting with people, not used to this kind of competition, not used to this kind of attention. And so as you start to kind of befriend her almost, she starts to open up more and more. And eventually it leads you to basically being cheered on by her in the end, to her being one of your most ardent supporters. Then we have Bede. And Bede is kind of the jackass of the rivals. He's the arrogant, pompous, self-inflated, ego-driven, just like the kind of rival that a lot of people at least have been wanting to return. The kind of rival that we really haven't had. Let's be honest, not to this level since Generation 2's Silver. Um, and so it's a welcome return for a lot of people to have this kind of rival again. However, Bede also evolves throughout the story. We see how he goes from this and where exactly his story goes. We see how he starts to kind of realize where his mistakes have taken him in the end, and how he uses it to honestly become a better person in a much better place. From his very humble origins as an orphan to a future gym leader himself. And it's just a really fantastic level of growth to give him as a character. And then we have other characters too. I'll go over the most notable ones, which are the gym leaders, the professors, and of course the champion. So let's talk about the characters we meet early on, and that starts with champion Leon. So Leon is the champion currently in the Galar region when you start your journey. He is Hop's big brother, and he's kind of like this larger-than-life personality. He has his own pose, he has a world-famous Charizard, and he's just like larger than life. But in reality, he's humble, he's kind, he's really terrible with directions, apparently. Also, he apparently is not good with like fancy food and stuff. Like Hop mentions at one point that Leon really doesn't have a taste for food, and that it's like he'll just go with something like cheap takeout, which I mean I don't have an issue with personally, but it's like yeah. But it helps humanize his character. He's not just this larger than life champion. He feels very human. You see him throughout pretty much the entire journey, and he always comes across as just this really nice, helpful, caring person who just wants to be the best champion for Galar. He wants to help out the people. He wants to be there when they need him and just inspire them. And I think that's fantastic. We also have Professor Magnolia and her granddaughter, Sonia. So Professor Magnolia is probably the oldest professor we have in this franchise. She's a elderly lady who's, like Leon, very nice, very kind, very supportive. She has a little bit of a sassy side to her as well. But to be honest, she's not in the game too much. Unlike characters like Leon and our rivals, she doesn't have as much of a presence because of that. Really, the reason she's introduced is to give character and depth to Sonia. Sonia is Professor Magnolia's granddaughter and a young researcher herself. She works as her grandmother's assistant, and throughout the journey, you get to see her throughout various towns and all as she's studying not only the mysteries of Dynamax, but also the legends and lore of the Galar region, and an event that took place a long, long time ago. As the game progresses, you get to kind of work with her in figuring things out. And by the end, she's become so invested in this research that she is named a Pokemon professor in her own right, and even writes a book on this research. But it's pretty fantastic in that way, because she's just automatically this really likable character who has connections to other characters such as Leon, who she took the gym challenge with years ago, as well as one of the gym leaders, Nessa, who is her best friend. And it's really wonderful to see this character who just grows and develops as the story goes on, who's not just a rival, who has bigger connections and helps move along the main plot in a different way. And it's also, speaking of her connections to other characters, it's great to see that these characters do have those connections. In a lot of these games, yeah, there are characters who will have connections to some degree, but a lot of them are kept more separate. Like, in the first game, you don't like see Lieutenant Surge and Blaine mentioning each other and talking about each other and even interacting. They're separate characters, they're meant to be separate, and they're not really seen as a connected force. That's one of the best things about Sword and Shield. Everything seems like it's connected. The Galar region seems like it's a group of friends in a way, all just together and all acknowledging each other and all supporting each other. They interact, they see each other, they talk to each other, they're in the same scenes together, and it matters. It makes it feel more realistic and alive. And then we get to like the gym leaders, and I'm not going to go over every one of them, but all of them have these wonderful personalities. They all come across as like with all these others I've mentioned, real characters with real depth that feel, well, real, that feel like they are people in a world rather than characters on a screen. And some of them have even bigger roles to play, such as the Dragon gym leader, the final of the 8 gym leaders, Rayhan, who is the personal rival to the champion, Leon, as well as one of your final stepping stones in getting to the championship match. Then you have, like I said, Nessa, who is best friends with Sonya. You have 2 gym leaders who, depending on which game you got, because that's actually something, gym leaders are different. Some of the gym leaders are different depending if you got Pokemon Sword or Pokemon Shield. And in one of the towns, if you have Shield, the gym leader is the mother of the gym leader if you have Sword. So it's like a mother-son gym leader duo, but the gym leader you face is either the mother or the son based on the game you have, and so on and so forth. And one of the gym leaders, Opal, even has a deep connection to Bede's story. Basically, it's because of her that that helps him develop and grow as much as he does in the end. So it's like, that alone is fantastic. And of course, I have to mention Team Yell. Team Yell is the quote-unquote evil team of the game, who basically goes around and messes with anyone who they deem as a threat to Marnie winning the Pokemon League championship. We find out later on, of course, that that's not really like their main thing, and we find out that they're really just gym trainers themselves, connected to Marnie's brother, and it's like, who himself is a gym leader, and it's like, wow. Once again, bringing everything connecting together, but it also gives depth to this evil team who we thought were gonna, well, be the evil team. In reality, we find out who the real bad guy is, and it's the guy who created the Pokemon League in Galar. Rose is a fantastic villain who really feels like he has a lot of depth. He's not just this random evil dude for the sake of being evil. He's not just a jerk. He's not just an asshole. He has a deep reason for doing what he's doing. He's just extremely wrong in doing it. And really doesn't think things through, ironically, considering his motivations. And he has an assistant who's a psycho bitch. Like, seriously, she's fucking crazy. And just all these other characters that make this world just, again, feel so alive. It honestly, amongst all of the regions, none of them have felt as alive and just personable as Galar has to me. But then let's talk about some of the new Pokemon and Galarian variants. Now, there's a lot of them. I'm not going to talk about all of them. I'll just mention a few standouts, such as our starters. I am obviously Grookey Gang, um, but there's also Sobble and Scorbunny. Now, personally, I was never a fan for the Scorbunny line. Like, prior to the game being released, I didn't know about any of the evolutions for the starters because they weren't revealed prior. Um, so when the game came out, I started seeing all these evolutions. It's like, wow, okay. I mean, we have Grookey, who evolves into Thwacky, who evolves into Rillaboom. And it's basically just a monkey gets bigger and then turns into a giant fucking gorilla with drums. But going back to Scorbunny, Scorbunny's third evolution, Cinderace, looks like a second evolution for a starter. I mean, the design is fine. It just doesn't look like a third evolution for a starter. And then Sobble's second evolution is just an emo kid. And the third evolution is like some kind of like secret agent or something. And it's just, it doesn't feel as natural and evolutionary line as like Grookey's does. So I'm very happy with having chosen to be part of Grookey Gang in comparison to the Sobble Squad or the Scorbunny Squad, which both use Squad for some reason, at least from what I've seen. Um, but then we have other new Pokemon. We have Dreadnought, who is a fantastic Pokemon. We have the Corviknight line, which is really good, like one of the best bird lines that we've had in a long fucking time. We have Yamper. The Yamper line is phenomenal. Like, I was not sure what I would think of the Yamper line initially, but it is really freaking good. And then we have like a bunch of Galarian variants. Some of them are just not that great, like Galarian Weezing. And then there's ones that are phenomenal, like Galarian Ponyta / Galarian Rapidash. And it just varies. Like with any generation, the Pokemon vary. There are good ones, there are bad ones. There are ones that just leave you asking why? Like Snom? What the fuck is Snom? Why the fuck is Snom? I don't know. But and that even goes with Galarian variants too. Like there's a Galarian variant of Stunfisk. It's like, who the fuck wanted a Galarian Stunfisk? Why is that a thing? No one cares about Stunfisk. But yeah, it's wild. There's a lot of great new Pokemon, a lot of great Galarian forms, and it just feels like this is one of the better sets of new Pokemon that we've gotten in quite a while. Sun and Moon had a good set, but prior to that, it felt like a bit of a dead zone for a couple years, where we had a few good Pokemon, for sure, but it was more not. But then we have locations, and the Galar region has a bunch of great locations. Just like with pretty much every region, you have all these different types of land. You have desert, you have like this rocky terrain, you have snow-covered terrain, you have water, you have all of that, of course. You have these deep forests and whatnot. And obviously, they all stand out. Everything really feels very, like, alive. The region is clearly based on the UK, and Galar has a lot of like rolling hills and whatnot. It has a lot of lush greenery, just really picturesque scenery. The locations themselves really stand out, from the different towns and cities all being named like very UK style names, to the forests like the Glimwood Tangle. And it's just, everything feels so much alive. You can go from like towns that are basically like this winter wonderland to what basically is a magical forest village deep in the Glimwood Tangle. And then you could go to Winden, which is the championship city, which is basically a bustling metropolis. um, and it's wild. And the architecture, one city is just basically a giant castle with a bunch of buildings just kind of built into it. It's just massive and freaky. Like the entrance is a giant dragon head, a giant stone dragon head, and it's like, holy shit. And it feels so alive and fantastic. It honestly feels magical in a way. A lot of this game focuses very much on like European mythology and lore and legends. And the Galar region itself, the region as it looks and as it like breathes in a way, feels like it very much captures that mythical vibe. Um, so a big question though, now the next topic I want to go into is the gym challenge. How does it compare to the past generations gym challenges or Sun and Moon's Island Challenge? Well, there's not really a lot to compare with the Island Challenge, so I'm going to mostly just talk about previous gym challenges. So like in the previous generations with gyms, we have 8 gyms, and then you go on to the Pokemon League. The big difference is there's no Elite Four. Um, in pretty much all of the previous generations except Sun and Moon, in fact, I think every other one, you get the 8 badges, you go to the Pokemon League, you fight the Elite Four, and then you fight the champion. And that's how it goes. But in this one, instead of an Elite Four, you actually have to like enter a championship tournament. And only from winning that can you get the chance to face the champion. And the way that this is handled in the story, how in Galar the championship, the Pokemon League championship or the gym challenge in general, is basically this big spectator sport where all the gyms are these giant arenas where the gym challenge isn't just done randomly at random points. It's actually like a season of sport, like a sports season. It's like, oh, the gym challenge, it has an opening ceremony and everything. Let's put it that way. It feels like a football season, and the championships are like the Super Bowl, basically. Well, the games leading up to the Super Bowl and the Super Bowl. You know what I mean. It's this bigger deal. So in this, it allows each gym battle to feel like it has a bigger scale, which allows you to connect with the battles that much more, and of course the gym leaders themselves. It feels more important than it ever has in the past. And I really think that helps make it stand out. Same goes with the Pokemon League, the actual championship. Instead of just having, 4 strong trainers, you have to be each with their own type, and then you have to beat the champion who has these really strong Pokemon. No, you go in this championship tournaments, one after the other. You win, you move ahead in the tournament, and you face of course, you face all of these trainers you faced in the past. But it feels like it's a much bigger deal. It feels like when you face Marnie in the championship compared to when you faced her previously, it feels like you've accomplished something much more than it ever did before. Same with when you fight Hop or Rayhan. It just feels like a much bigger deal. And because of that, it helps just the game feel like a much bigger deal. The league championship itself is just so freaking well handled. It just it makes it feel like you've accomplished something bigger than ever before. When you win, when you beat the champion, when you beat Leon and become the new champion of the Galar region, it just feels like, yeah, this is something massive that I've accomplished. Other than it feeling like, oh, I beat the game. Awesome, cool. No, it feels like it's something like magical, again, to use that word. But moving on from that, another thing I was worried about going into the games was the Dynamax and Gigantamax function. Basically, what it is Dynamaxing is once per turn, once per match for 3 turns. In certain battles, you can basically make your Pokemon grow giant. It increases their power and allows for just bigger moves and stuff. And Gigantamaxing is Dynamaxing, except that the Pokemon who Gigantamax, and this only works with certain Pokemon, they change their form a little bit as well. Like Charizard, for example, goes from just a normal Charizard to looking like this giant, monstrous, honestly horrifying dragon. And there's this Pokemon named Grimmsnarl, who's a creepy goblin monster, who goes to looking like this giant, just horrifying, just evil abomination of Satan, basically. And it's really good. Like, again, I was worried about how this was going to work and how this was going to feel in game. It felt amazing. Like when you Dynamax with the gym leaders in during each of the gym battles, or during the championship league, or during these big story moments, it feels like it just enhances the battle so much more. It doesn't feel out of place. It doesn't feel weird or random. It doesn't feel like too much or just like some gimmicky little thing. It feels like, yeah, this is a big, awesome, wicked addition. And it feels like this is part of the Galar region. And part of that is, of course, the fact that Dynamaxing is a legitimate part of the story that has a deep, important connection to the legendary Pokemon Eternatus, and in the end is exceptionally important to the story. But still, it just feels so natural. And speaking of natural, probably the best location is the wild area. And I wanted to touch on this separately because of how big of a deal the wild area is. So prior to the game's release, we learned about the wild area, basically this big patch of land in the Galar region where you'd see all these Pokemon walking around, flying around. You could set up camp. You could have Dynamax battles with other players around the world, all that kind of fun stuff. But in game, as you're actually playing through it, it's so much more than that. I mean, it's all of that, yes, but it's so much more because you'll come across a lot of Pokemon who are way over leveled. Like you could be in your late teens, early 20s in terms of your levels, and come across a level 50 Corviknight. And it's like, so you kind of have to pick and choose where in the wild area you go and what Pokemon you face. And then certain areas will only be unlocked later on, such as when you're able to cross water. And once you get a certain amount of gym badges, there's an area that's unlocked. And it really helps it feel alive. I like the fact that this big wild area has all of these higher leveled Pokemon when you're not ready for them. I think that feels natural. Like you should be coming across that kind of stuff. I mean, most of the game, you're going through these routes that have like Pokemon on your level. Yeah. And if you go back through those routes, obviously you'll be over leveled later on. But still, the wild area, I feel like the entire region should be like that. Like that would be a wish for a future generation for sure. Have an entire region that's basically just the wild area instead of having routes. And you go throughout the wild area to get to different towns and cities, and there's of course different parts of the wild area have different leveled Pokemon stuff, and you can only get to certain parts after you've accomplished certain things, yada yada. But I really loved it. I love how you could see how certain Pokemon moving around are much bigger, and you can much further evolved, so you can tell that they're going to be a lot stronger and definitely out of your league. How Pokemon will actually chase you around out of the grass. And speaking of going into that, yeah, Pokemon, you don't find them like you used to. You don't just have these random encounters. There's two ways to find a Pokemon in the tall grass. You either see them actually walking around, which is great. I love that addition. Or you'll see a question mark pop up, and there'll be rustling in the grass as it moves toward you. And if it hits you, it starts a battle. I think this makes it feel more like how Pokemon, in my opinion, should be, and how it is honestly in the anime. You actually see the Pokemon. You actually see them going about. And if you take it down, if you defeat or capture one of the wild Pokemon that are just walking around, they'll eventually respawn. It feels very natural in that way. And again, it just makes the entire world just feel more alive, feel more just fulfilled, you know? Um, and I really quickly want to touch on graphics. The graphics look amazing. It's a massive step up. A lot of the national dexters and a lot of the people who were speaking out against Sword and Shield before it was released, one of the big gripes that a lot of people were going on about, oh, it uses the same models. The graphics don't look good. It's like, this is what we're getting for our first Pokemon on this Switch. It looks terrible. The movements are so terrible. And it's like, okay, you're looking at pre-release footage, first of all, which is never final. Second, I don't know what you were looking at, but not even just the cutscene stuff, even just the walking around animations and just general graphics and look of it all is breathtaking. Not just the best graphics we've seen in a Pokemon game, some of the just best we've seen in this style of game. I mean, obviously, you're going to have a lot of games out there like Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild that are more technically brilliant, that are technically more sound and better made, of course. And you're going to have a lot of games like that, especially in today's day and age with video games. But in terms of these kind of games, and in terms of this stylized look, this feels like this is the premium Pokemon graphics we could have at this point in time. Hell, it honestly feels beyond its years. These graphics just feel so much better than we deserve or we should have at this point in time for Pokemon. It just feels that good. And the music, oh, some of the best, if not the best music in the franchise. I mean, the battle themes, the encounter music, the different locations music, such as the Glimwood Tangle, or especially the Weld. The Weld's theme is breathtaking. And it's just absolutely gorgeous and really sells the scenery. I already mentioned how the scenery was breathtaking in and of itself. The scenery was just gorgeous and looked so good. Part of the reason why it feels good to play it and to go through all of that is because of the music. Because it sells the scenery. It helps it feel more alive and natural. And like with any game or any movie or whatever, the music is important to just immersing you into it. Now, there's also a few little fun things that the game has added in. There's customization, of course, that we've had for the past few generations. Being able to customize your character's look. And like has been continuously going with the past generations, it's much better in this one. We get more options for hairstyles. We got makeup styles in which you can change your eye color, in my case, as a female character, you can change eyelashes, lipstick, all that kind of stuff. You can change your clothing. There's a lot of different clothing choices. You have different bags. You can have all kinds of stuff. There are league cards, which is basically like your Pokemon League ID. And you can change your picture on that. You can do different poses that are unlocked throughout the game, different facial expressions. You can zoom in or zoom out, move your character around, change their position. You can have different overlays and whatnot, and it's just a really, really cool idea. Plus, the league cards are also interchangeable with other players via the Wi-Fi connection and stuff. So it's like you can exchange those with other players and have a lot of fun that way. There's also camping, which you can do mostly anywhere. Camping allows you to do stuff such as play with your Pokemon. Whether you're playing with them with toys, you can talk to them, they can interact with each other. Or, on top of that, you can even create curry, which was a big thing with the pre-release information when that was revealed. Basically, you just make curry recipes from berries and other ingredients you get along the way, and you have to do some little mini games to make it, and you get a curry rating, you get it added to your curry decks. And whenever you make curry, it heals up your team, it makes them friendlier towards you. It can even revive previously fainted Pokemon. So it's actually super useful at times. And it's just a lot of fun. But then I want to talk, just the last thing I really want to cover is the legendaries. So I'm not a big legendary user. Like, I almost never use the legendaries because I feel like it's not really something you should do. Like, that's just how I personally feel. Of course, if you use legendaries, that's fine. But it just feels like it feels cheap to me. It feels like a cheap way out. I prefer to use Pokemon that I've raised and trained throughout the journey. It feels more personal. It feels more earned. It feels more natural. When you catch this legendary and start using them, it just feels like a shortcut, basically. So when I look at the legendaries, I judge them more on how they're interacted into the story and their designs and stuff. And this time we have three specifically to talk about. Zacian and Zamazenta are the cover legendaries. They are legendary wolves who are definitely based on old folklore and stuff. You could even say that Zacian is based off of, I believe that it's actually Nordic mythology. But I mean, you could also connect it to Dark Souls and Sif in that. But yeah, you have these two mythical wolves, and their integration into the story is very well handled. The mysterious way that you first encounter your cover legendary at the beginning, and then how they're just kind of built up throughout the rest of the game until the end when you have to get their help in order to save the Galar region and probably the whole world from Eternatus. Eternatus is the final legendary. Eternatus is basically this giant worm-like creature. I guess the best way to describe it would be a Lovecraftian horror. That was basically in this deep slumber thanks to the heroes of legend. Of the Galar region years and years in the past, as well as, of course, Zacian and Zamazenta. Then we have the fact that it's awakened by Chairman Rose and is now about to basically destroy the Galar region, practically. And it even, excuse me, it even Gigantamaxes at one point. And it's like you have to have like 3 different battles with it. It's insane. And it's like, when it Gigantamaxes, it's even more Lovecraftian and just terrifying. And it's like, it just has this massive presence to it. You are forced to capture Eternatus as part of the story. But like I said, I never used it. I don't know how good it is. I don't know like what its stats are like or what its moves are like. I don't even know its typing. Because it's just not interesting to me to use a legendary. It's not something I want to do. But I had a lot of fun with this. like I said, I didn't get to play the last generation. And because of it, my interest in Pokemon didn't wane or anything, but I kind of feel like I forgot the true magic of this franchise. And even though I loved Sun and Moon and still do, I think what makes Sword and Shield my new favorite Pokemon generation is the fact that I played it, is the fact that I got to experience this journey as my journey, that I got to raise these Pokemon, that I got to face these gym leaders and this amazing championship league, that I got to go on this journey and save the world from Eternatus with Zacian and Zamazenta, that I got to confront Chairman Rose, that I got yelled at by a crazy bitch. Damn you, Oleana. But in all seriousness, this game didn't reignite a love for Pokemon because my love for Pokemon never went away. It reignited the magic of playing Pokemon for me. It made it mean so much more than it ever had before. And honestly, I wouldn't have it any other way. This game made me cry on multiple occasions. Not because of what was happening in the story, although there were a couple points that did that as well, but because of just the feeling of being in this kind of world again, of getting immersed, of just having fun. And that's what this is about. That's what this is all about. Having fun, enjoying the ride. Just raising and loving on your Pokemon and becoming the champion. It's a fantastic journey. And if you haven't played a Pokemon game in the past and are for some reason watching this, I definitely suggest these two. And you don't have to have played or seen any other Pokemon game to play these. I would definitely suggest these. And I hope you get into the franchise. And for those of you who have been into the franchise, who are fans, who have been fans for a long time, I hope you loved it as much as I did. Honestly, it's just, I can't even believe how much I loved this game. But for now, I think we've talked much long enough. So, from me and from my beloved Kiki here, my starter of the Galar region, of my first Pokemon journey in many years, I'm Connie, and I'm signing off. See y'all next time.